Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome to Culture Night.
Where each week we drink fancy wine and watch movies that are in some way culturally significant. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sarah. And we're back for season 3.
Look at us.
Where did the time go?
I don't know. It's been a while. I feel like we kind of need to take a break at some point, but we're just plowing right through these seasons now.
Yeah.
I feel like last season felt long at first, but then I feel like it flew by.
Yes. It felt, I think, long when we were planning it, like, oh, we're going to watch these movies forever, but it did go by pretty quick. We will get into our season 2 recap momentarily, but first, let's just go ahead and jump into what we're drinking this week.
We are drinking the 2016 Silver Reserve Merlot.
You know, as a kid, I really thought Merlot was something that I was going to drink all the time. I mean, I feel like it was like the red wine I always heard people talk about, the grown-ups. But I just really don't drink it as much as I thought I would.
I didn't know much about wines like growing up, but I feel like I heard about like Merlot a lot and thought it was like just the most like stereotypical like common one. But I feel like now like Cab Sav is the much more common and blends obviously.
I agree. Cab Sav is like the standard red wine for me. So let's jump into it. You can grab the bottle.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, it kind of has a dry nose.
Look at you using some words.
Did I look up words? No, I forgot, but I was trying to
get some reason on the nose.
Of course you
flashback.
are. Your favorite. But I also still get that like Christmas smell, like pine cones and cinnamon.
I'm getting more raisin.
You'd think I'd have a better idea of what raisin smells like, seeing as our child eats them every day. Ooh. Oh, now I can't wait to try it.
Yeah, I don't even know. It was like a little like more tart than I was expecting, and I get another sip to. Really...
It has a good lasting aftertaste. Ooh, there's some like I think it's barrel. I get again that like wood oaky.
See, I'm not getting that. I'm getting more berry, but not barrel.
Definitely berry on the beginning. I need another sip. I'm going to look up some more words while we watch this movie and come in the after show with some better descriptors. But so far, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I got nothing for words otherwise. I feel like I'm really letting everyone down here. But
I know we did all our other homework except for looking up new words.
Well, let's look up a quick description, though. We just talked about the Silver Reserve. You'll find this Merlot rich, deep, complex, and absolutely cellar-worthy for many years to come. That doesn't really help us describe the tasting notes.
I mean, I will say I agree it is complex. I feel like there's the smell, the nose, and the taste right when it hits your tongue, and the aftertaste are all layered.
Yeah, it's very multiple. Okay.
But so far, so good. So before we jump into any of our typical beginning of the podcast stuff, I thought we would go ahead and start with our season 2 recap since we are moving into season 3 and our new genre of musicals. And before we jump into the musicals, as you can tell if you're watching on YouTube, we have come in our brightly dressed attire today, as opposed to the black and white.
Black and white, grayscale.
I do miss that a little bit already, though. It was a nice vibe. But I just have a couple questions to let us reflect on season 2 and things to think about as we move forward into season 3. So to start off with, now that the season is over, how are you feeling about the film noir choice, especially since you were the one that was like the real driving force behind it?
I still feel like it was a good choice. Some movies that I otherwise wouldn't have seen at this point. I do feel like there's still more to unpack though. And I feel like we didn't quite get the stereotypical, film noir, like almost, I was hoping for more of what Sin City was parodying than what we got from the actual classic ones. But I think maybe we didn't see too many of those, older ones. We kind of jumped, from the 40s to the 80s. Yes. Maybe there's something in between there that we could bridge it with. But otherwise I did really enjoy the choice.
I did too. I mean, I was not as hype as you about it, but seeing that this was our first themed season and we're still early on in the podcast, it felt like starting kind of back at the beginning was a good, not the actual beginning. We didn't do silent films, but starting back more towards the beginning of Hollywood makes sense. And I took a lot more from it than I thought I would, but I agree. We're missing something.
Yeah.
We'll find it. And our next my next question is, what was your favorite movie that we watched this season?
Do you want to go first for this one?
Sure. Well, it's hard because I think my favorite movie was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but it's not a true film noir. So my favorite of the season was that. My favorite of the true film noir was probably, I'm going to say Stranger on the Third Floor.
Interesting. I'm going to go with Maltese Falcon, but I want to hear your thoughts on Stranger on the Third Floor. Why it's your
I mean,
choice.
it was a toss-up because Big Sleep was just very confusing. It was a toss-up between Maltese Falcon and Stranger on the Third Floor. I think maybe it was like the first one. It had a lot more of the like in the city vibes and
there was like some voiceover.
yes, all that narration and the dream sequence and all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, and it's now been 6 weeks since we've watched it, or 7 weeks. I don't know. That
It almost felt like they were having more fun filming it too. I don't know. There's something about it where it just seemed like they were in unknown territory and were kind of like feeling out what they could do with this, and it seemed like they were having a bit more fun with it.
Yeah, and it was the first, like you said, the supposed first film noir, so there were no real rules and just kind of figuring it all out. I don't know. I think that one was my favorite.
Yeah, I liked Maltese Falcon. It seemed like it kind of had a good like, kind of storyline. Felt like they were actually solving a real crime there, and making you kind of guess what was actually happening, and also gave us the word dingus. That we've been
That's
using
true.
Much more often.
That's true. That bumps that up a little bit.
I also did like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I've also seen that before. So I was going for one that I was more being introduced to. And I think Maltese Falcon was number one. I think Big Sleep is firmly at the bottom of my list.
Firmly? The bottom or at the bottom?
It's the bottom. I can't think of one that would have been below.
Wonder Man?
Okay, I'm sorry. I take it
Yeah,
back.
I was like, I'm sorry
for that one out. Sorry.
for the man that hated that movie so much.
I just want to throw Wonder Man out. That was just awful. I can't even think of that in the season. That was just a weird fever dream.
Fever dream. It did kind of seem like that. I don't know. I think Big Sleep was a little bit more of a fever dream. I don't know.
It just wouldn't end.
All right. And then, so my next question or thing to discuss is to go back to How Noir You Are. Go ahead and say it.
How Noir You Are.
There we go. And just to go back and revisit the scores for each movie, and we will have a most noir you are and a least noir you are. So the, should I go from the bottom to the top?
Yep.
So the movie with the lowest film noir score based on the 10 components of film noir that Todd from the Cinema Monolith blog put together. Wonder Man is the least at a 4.5 out of 10. Then Who Framed Roger Rabbit at 5.
It was weird 'cause it seemed very much like the
Right?
most of them.
I was making sure I had them in the right order because that didn't feel right, but
I guess second most. I think Sin City felt like it was the most.
Well, hang on tight. Let's see how the rest of this shakes out. So Who Framed Roger Rabbit was the second from the bottom. Stranger on the Third Floor was next at 6 out of 10. And then it is a tie for, I guess we'll call it second place, between The Big Sleep and Sin City for second place at 7 out of 10. And then the most noir you are is The Maltese Falcon. Did I say, oh, sorry, I didn't say it. 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
So we did get one that was pretty high on the list. One day maybe we'll find a 10.
Yeah, I feel like that one was just missing like riding the rails and like the voiceover.
I think so.
I think that was about it. Otherwise, it was all I feel like all 10.
But I did really appreciate having the structure of a list like this, and maybe I should have looked a couple other places just to have compared a couple lists and made a more comprehensive score. But to have something to kind of look for and to guide our thoughts on what these movies were, I appreciated how that came to be, and that we had it from the first episode or the second episode.
Yeah, it kind of felt give us a good starting point to kind of really start understanding these movies and what we were looking for in the genre.
Especially since obviously we weren't around at the time, so we have no real basis in these movies. All right. Next is, so when we revisit this theme, because we have big plans to come back, because like we said, we don't feel truly fulfilled by the 6 movies we've seen so far. What do you want to do different, or what are you most looking forward to?
I want to do a little more research into what like the film noir that we kind of imagine today is like, and see if I can find what actually is based on that. I want to find a movie where there's some voiceover, there's some rain, and a woman comes into the private detective's office looking to solve some sort of crime. And he like talks about it, and like those are the 3 like main components that I think of, and obviously it'd be black and white. That's really what I'm looking for there.
But as you were saying all that, I like kind of pictured bits and pieces from all the ones we saw, and then I was like, oh no, they weren't all from the same movie. So
we most got that with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I want to see one more from that time period of like, before the 60s.
For sure. Yeah. I think it was hard because we got a really good list of suggestions from, sorry, I forget your name, on Twitter. And I wanted to watch a lot of those. And I feel like we had more of a list, but we also wanted to do some of these parody neo-noir type films too. So it was hard to narrow it down to a concise amount, but I'm definitely excited to come back and try something else.
Definitely include those next time.
And then any other thoughts on season 2 or just the idea of having seasons? How do you feel about it?
I feel like we kind of had a good amount of movies in that season. I think if we'd gone much more, we would have gotten tired of the genre of doing that each week. And I'm excited to kind of go to a new one, and we'll see if this, same number of like somewhere between 6 to 10 episodes works out for us.
Yeah, I definitely, from a watching and critiquing movie standpoint, loved the genre theme. To have something to track and something to watch for from week to week. I think it drove our discussions a little bit more and gave us a little bit more of a purpose and an intent going into watching the movies. I do have to say I kind of miss a little bit being able to just hard pivot every single week and be really like spicy with the choices. I think that made it a little more exciting week to week.
Yeah, but it also kind of gives us a little bit more of a direction for each week, not being like,
it's way easier to pick the movie.
Afternoon, what are we going to possibly pick out of everything?
Yeah.
To be like, okay, we're going to go ahead and do the next, natural one in this list.
Yes. I mean, overall, I definitely like it, and I don't have any intention to change it unless we want to do a short, like 4-episode series where we just pick about like 4 weeks in a row of random movies if we ever feel the need to do that.
We can do like a grab bag season if we need to.
Yeah, but that's the one thing I do miss is just kind of that it's different every week and there's a little more variety. I did get a little tired, but I'm also I like it overall.
Yep. All
right, so now it is time to. With that, season 2 is over. Well, we're still gonna sleep on it a little bit.
We need like a door closed.
Yeah.
Button. Sorry,
I was not prepared with my sounds. But we are now going to jump into behind the screens, where we go behind the big screens of Hollywood and learn more about some aspect of film production or storytelling.
So this week, I researched the Foley artist.
I've always wondered what that was. Thank you.
Because it seemed like
enlighten me.
Really cool word, one that I hadn't really, kind of like Best Boy and
Key grip
and all those things. So the Foley artist is named after Jack Foley, who lived from 1891 to 1967.
The people born in the 1800s gets me every time.
And he became prevalent enough for this to be called the Foley artist around 1914. And so what happened is back in the 1920s on radio shows, if radio shows wanted to have like sound effects, like nowadays we have like soundboards to play various things, like on the Rodecaster Pro. Maybe we could hire a Foley artist to add a closed door.
Yeah, help me out a little bit.
Yeah, the phonographs had just really poor recording quality. So if they wanted to interject a like sound effect to record an actual like car driving by or sand falling or something, to record that on a phonograph was not going to then be replayed into a microphone and sound great. So they had people that would go in and actually just recreate these sound effects using either the actual thing or something to replicate that sound on there.
Oh man!
And so like of people like mimicking like footsteps or a door closing or something falling or chattering, all of those things, doing those into a microphone gave a much better representation of that sound effect. And so then later on in the 1920s or so, when sound started being added to movies, Universal was the first one to say, hey, we actually need to make sure we're upping our game and we're actually giving good quality sound and not just, having some sound effects in there. So they hired a bunch of these guys from the radio shows to say, hey, come and add these sound effects to our movies to make them sound good. And Jack Foley was like the most prominent one of them, and led to the term being, or the role being known as the Foley artist. The three main types of sounds for Foley artists are feet, movement, and specifics, which sounds like these are all very broad. So feet obviously being like footsteps being added, movement being like, something going by or whirling in the background, and specifics being random things like the sound of like rain hitting the pavement or something shattering or something. Interestingly, originally they did this all in one take. So they would literally sit there with a microphone while the movie played, and they would add these sound effects at specific times as the movie happens. So you have to have all these various props in a row to have by the microphone so they could quickly say like, okay, footsteps. All right. Glass shattering. All right. Baby crying. Like all these various things that they might need to have all in a row.
Imagine the pressure.
And imagine you get like an hour and a half into it and someone sneezes. Like,
oh no.
Just must have been super stressful. Probably really fun. But also super stressful.
I'd imagine you'd be very sweaty and exhausted when you were done.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, the thought of like getting all these things in a line, and be like, okay, I'm going to go from here to here to here, and then you're going to bring this over to me at this point, so I can, add this random like flute or something to it. Must have been really fun. Yeah. And the purpose of the Foley artist is to make the film feel more realistic, more immersive, more believable. Are the three main components, but also the biggest thing is that otherwise, without a lot of these sound effects, they would otherwise seem too quiet. And originally that was because microphones just kind of sucked at picking up a lot of noise. Like that's the reason why radio broadcasters have their high pitched radio voice, is because the microphones couldn't pick up like a deep voice like mine. You have to talk in the old school. It's a baseball broadcasting voice, high pitched, that voice like every radio person had.
Thanks for the invitation.
The microphones sucked so much. So they could barely pick that up. They definitely couldn't pick up like anything happening around there very well. So they would add that in post by trying to add these various sound effects.
Interesting. So as soon as you started talking about this, I got this vivid memory. Of course, I can't remember what it's from. Some DVD behind the scenes extra. It all keeps coming back. Or some behind the scenes video I saw on YouTube of people doing this. And I kind of want to say it was for Friends, but just, walking on rice to make a certain sound, or all the weird, almost like props that they had to make these specific sounds. And it's fascinating.
The crazy thing is there's some things that's like, to make the sound of a cat, we use this weird, like, and it's like something like nothing like anything you would imagine, but like they do it and you're like, that does sound like kind of like a cat. It's like the weird things that they
the creativity of that. And I think that and the props department and how they put together certain things to make the props that they want. I would personally love it, being the creative maker kind of person that I am. But it also just seems like it'd be exhausting to really have to like mentally stretch yourself to make all of these sounds.
And nowadays, obviously, it's done in post. They've got separate tracks, and they can do things like if a take like doesn't sound right, like they realize the person's voice didn't have the impact they wanted or didn't have the tone, they can go back and dub it over later in post and literally have them sit down in a recording studio to try to mimic that sound. And
I believe it's called ADR. I don't know what it stands for.
It is ADR. So obviously, it's evolved a lot since then, and you have a lot more tools at your disposal to do that.
Yeah, very cool.
I definitely had seen like this role before. I don't think I knew what it was called. But
I didn't know what it was called either.
But it's interesting to know why it was called that.
Yeah, I was trying to imagine what kind of like artist, like painting, drawing was when I read that I was not imagining sound art. But very cool. Another week and we are enlightened again.
We'll see how long I can keep that up.
Very true. Okay, so now it's time to jump into a quick Slept On It segment for Sin City and go back to our ratings. Does your rating change after sleeping on it? Last week you started out giving it a 5 and then switched it up to a 6, and I gave it a 6.7.
I'm actually going to bump it up even all the way to a 6.5. Mainly because I really now more appreciate the comic book vibe they were going to. Obviously, I realized they were trying to make it feel like a comic book or graphic novel, but seeing that they kind of started from the very beginning of being like, this is what we want it to be. Like, we want it to be this really cool, super artistically different movie, and we're going to make it like seem like you are literally in a comic book. And how they pulled that off a little bit better. Am I going to want to rewatch it all the time? Not really. But I do appreciate more the actual nuance of it and the reasoning behind the movie.
I might bump it down to a 6.5 with you because, I mean, obviously I came in hot and heavy with the appreciation for so much of that last week. But it is also just not a movie that I'm really hyped to see again or quote or talk about all the time. So I think I just need to bump it back just a little bit.
But if someone's going to be watching like film noir, I'm going to be like, hey, you should definitely check out Sin City. It's a really cool like neo-noir take on this. But I'm not going to be like, what are we watching tonight? I don't know. Let's go ahead and watch Sin City again.
Yeah, like, start from the beginning. 2 hours and 27 minutes.
Yeah. If it's on, I'm probably going to watch a little bit of it. Probably not all of it.
Agreed. All right. Now I have a couple deep dive, shallow dives on Sin City before and the noir genre. And then we will officially turn the page to season 3. So I did a quick couple notes on the neo-noir genre because this is considered a neo-noir Sin City. And it is considered the revival of film noir. And it really started around 1970 is when the film critics started to use neo-noir as the title for these types of movies. I think there was a couple maybe that were in the 70s or late 60s, but mostly 1970 is when this title started to be used. And it has a similar style to film noir, but with more updated themes, content, style, and visual elements, obviously.
And probably more emphasizing a lot of those like things that we think of with film noir that I wouldn't be surprised if we went back and looked at like one of the first like neo-noir movies if it was exactly what I'm looking for.
That's true. So maybe next time we start in the 70s, keep that in mind. Note to us later.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot more to get in with neo-noir, but it's pretty much just a revival of film noir. And then I tried to look a little bit more into the color choices for Sin City. We did talk about it a little bit last week. It's really hard to find anything definitive on the internet. Most of the things I started to click on something, then I realized it said termpaperbank.com or something like that. And I was like, oh, so someone wrote an essay about this for college or whatever. And so, or there was lots of like discussion board forums and mostly people's personal opinion. It seems to mostly be based off of like graphic novels, color choices, and what Frank Miller used.
They had in the graphic novel, but I didn't know if there was more beyond it. Because there were various things like the red shoes there, but some of the things I think were kind of done for really cool effect, like the coughing up the pee after he had drowned him in the toilet for a little bit.
Yeah. One thing I did see was that it did highlight an element of the character's identity, so their eyes or their hair or whatever, or
the yellow guy, the skin tone.
His yellow face, or to accentuate everyday things or to show violence. So I think there were probably some specific intentions. There were just like a couple intentions layered in there. So nothing super definitive there, but still I was really hoping that there was some kind of very specific reason that certain things were in color, like, oh, like you're about to die or some kind of thread like that, but it does not seem to be the case. And then the last thing is I have just a couple quick fun facts about the movie. They only built 4 sets for the whole movie. Most of it was shot on green screens. They built the jail cell for Hardigan, Katie's bar, Shelley's apartment, and the hospital scene for the epilogue. So most of it was everything else was green screen.
Yeah, it was kind of weird watching some of the behind the scenes thing where it was like literally just in this tiny little room, like all the acting, especially at the car or whatever.
Yeah, to see the physical car, but then just the green walls around it. It's crazy. So only 4 sets. The opening sequence was shot as the audition for the director, Rodriguez. I can't remember what his first name is. That he was like trying to convince Frank Miller to give him the rights to the movie. And he's like, how about this? We'll shoot this little scene. If you like how it turns out, we can keep going with this. If not, then you have this short little short film of your graphic novel. And they shot it all. And then he edited, colorized, like did all the final stuff in one day and gave it back to Frank Miller, and he signed on right away. So that was like an audition for the rest of it. It was a really cool scene,
but it also like didn't really fit into the rest of it until the very end. You see him, but seemed kind of unnecessary, but give you kind of an introduction to Sin City itself, I guess.
Yeah, and it makes sense knowing that it was shot kind of in this isolated way. But I agree. As I was watching it, I was like expecting these characters to come back, and they did not. They used the actual pictures from the graphic novel as storyboards when they were planning the movie out. So instead of having somebody draw it up or do anything else, they just took the graphic novel and used that to plan the whole movie out.
For shot.
And then many of the actors that signed on to the movie signed on because they always wanted to star in a classic film noir movie. So like Bruce Willis, he was always wanted to be in one of those old, and the article said old-timey film noir movies. So I felt like that was a cool fact given that we watched
Makes sense.
that.
It's kind of like a lot of the Star Wars movies that they put out now have so many weird cameos where you're like, oh, this person just was obsessed with Star Wars back then and wanted to always be in a Star Wars movie, and now they're remaking it, so of course they're in it. I can see that being, having grown up and like watching some of these or reading some of these books, being like, oh, I always wanted to be in one of these
definitely
crime movies. Yeah.
So Sin City, you were great. We learned a lot, took a lot from it. And now we are closing that chapter officially now and moving on to musicals.
So what are we watching tonight to kick off season 3, Ep1?
To kick off season 3, we are watching Singin In The Rain from 1952.
Rated G, apparently.
Which I think they must have gone back and given it a rating because it was before the MPAA ratings came out, but should be very tame compared to Sin City.
Yeah, we'll see what G meant in 1952. So let's go ahead and hop in the time machine. welcome to 1952, where the top 3 movies released in the year are The Greatest Show on Earth. I guess this is the prequel to The Greatest Showman.
That's what I thought when I was reading it. I was like, did I get the wrong year?
Greatest Show on Earth, grossing $36 million. The Snows of Kilimanjaro, grossing $12.9 million, and High Noon, grossing $8 million. Don't think I've heard of any of those. Maybe High Noon, but that might also just be a word or phrase I've heard before.
Nothing.
I'm assuming that's like some sort of Western. The top 3 songs are Blue Tango by Leroy Anderson, Wheel of Fortune by K Star, and Cry by Johnny Ray and the Four Lads.
I have not heard any of these things.
Maybe I'm just like not remembering very well, but I feel like I don't know if there's any bands today that have names like that. Like, I mean, obviously we had Hootie and the Blowfish, which is the last one I can really remember, but like Johnny Ray and the Four Lads.
It does sound
Are you
very
Johnny
much
Ray
out of that
or are you
time.
one of the lads? Like, I just love that.
Well, I guess the Taylor Jenkins Reid book, Daisy Jones and the Six, that just came out as a movie, The Six and Daisy Jones.
Yeah, that was also a fictional band.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's not totally disappeared. But hey, bring it back.
Just,
I'd be a lad.
yeah. Especially if like the person who's like the main name there is like also completely made up.
Yes, love that. Also keep in mind that any of our numbers for these are with an asterisk because it is hard to find data from the box offices and the Billboard charts.
If it ever existed at all.
Yes. I just get to give us some kind of sign of the times.
Yeah.
We pick some songs.
According to some source somewhere, those are the top 3 movies and top 3 songs.
Have you seen Singin' in the Rain before?
I have not.
I have not seen it either.
I honestly did not even know it was an actual musical until last week when you were like, we should watch this for the first movie.
I did know it was a musical.
I mean, I knew it was a song, but I didn't know it was like actually like the name of a musical. I just figured it was from some musical.
Something else, yeah. Yeah, I don't know much about it. Actually, I know it's a musical. I know the song. I don't know anything else. Is it Cary Grant?
No idea.
Fred Astaire. Is someone big?
I believe in A Clockwork Orange, the main character sings this song during one of the most famous like violent scene. And in Friends, doesn't Ross like dance to this?
He does.
After he
sleeps with Rachel.
Yeah.
Or sleeps with somebody. Yes,
Somebody. Julie, yeah. After,
Season 2.
yeah. It was after Rachel had tried to talk him out of it, I think.
Yes.
That's about all I know about it.
Yeah, I don't know much. I have to say, we wanted to start chronologically from the first. We had a list. This was the earliest one, and we figured we should watch them in order.
Earliest one on our list.
On our list, yeah.
I'm sure there were ones before that.
Am ready to be out of the old times for a while. So I'm not, I mean, I think it will be good, and I think we will take a lot from it going into this theme, but I'm not super hype on it right now. We'll see if that changes when the movie's over.
Yeah.
But
well, let's hop into it.
yeah, I'm excited. Singin' in the Rain. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Singin' in the Rain.
That was certainly something.
Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting.
So I was expecting it to be a like set in New York movie. It's like he's chasing after this girl. Like they start courting. He gets excited, sings in the rain. Maybe some like antics ensue or some like miscommunication, ends up winning over her heart. And like, I thought it was going to be one of those like cut and dry, very much like overdone type movies with a bunch of musical numbers in between. It was not that though.
Yeah.
That's not what that was.
And we will get into it after we talk about the wine.
Yes. So start with the wine scale. Wine scale is a 0 to 10 scale. It's very subjective. It's heavily weighted given the fact that all of the wines that we will be drinking on this show are good wines.
They're great.
So a low score does not necessarily mean this is a bad wine or that we don't recommend it. It's just all kind of relative gut feeling. That being said, I'm going to rate this wine a 4.8.
I was going to give it a 5 flat.
It just didn't do too much for me. I was actually going to go with like the 5, but I feel like I gave a wine a 5 a couple weeks ago, and it seemed a little bit less than that even.
Yeah. I gave last week's a 5.2 and I liked last week's a little bit more. Not that I liked this less or liked this in a worse way. I liked last week's better a little bit, but it was just kind of like I said last week, a good every day drinking wine, like I'm not gonna be mad to drink it.
Yeah. If
It's not bad.
If someone was like, is wine good? I'd be like, yeah, it's good.
But it's not like do you remember when we drank the 2016 Merlot? Like,
yeah, it's a good, like, I'm just hanging out watching TV. I want to drink some good wine. It didn't really open up that much. I don't really have too much more to say. Like the first taste we got was kind of like what you got the rest of it. And
it was enjoyable the whole way through. It was not bad. It was
having drinks a bad wine.
I was really hoping one of us was going to bring this up.
Tasted like some carbonated cardboard. This wine was
so bad.
Leagues above that for sure.
Yeah. Last night's wine was atrocious that I was very much looking forward to tonight all day because last night's wine was just truly, truly bad that I will say, doing this podcast gives me appreciation for those times when I have those really bad wines. That how lucky am I that I get to drink a really nice bottle of wine every Wednesday.
So if you get the choice between drinking last night's like licking in the floor Cab Sav or the Silver Reserve Merlot from Paso Robles, Tobin James, I highly recommend this one, the Silver Reserve Merlot from Tobin James.
Yeah.
No
it's
questions.
like last night's wine was like licking the floor covered with like pop rocks and sand.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's honestly shockingly accurate. We're not going to name names of what wine it was because I feel bad, but like it was bad. It was bad wine. This is
yes.
not to go too on a tangent. This is very good.
Yes. So on
Let's
to
4.8 because we heavily weight scales and everything's subjective.
On to tonight's movie rating. Oh man, I wasn't prepared for a movie rating yet.
Yeah. So as a movie or as a musical, I'm not sure how I want to rate this. I think we've so far just been rating them as a movie, like watching them. I'm going to say a 4.5.
I was going to go 5.4. Opposite.
Oh man, there we go. Always close, but not quite there.
We can get into the nitty gritty of it in our notes and such, but
just with my like criteria of like rewatchability, how likely would I be to just like pick it up and rewatch it or finish watching it if it was already on TV? How quotable is it? How much did I enjoy it? Those are my general 4 criteria. I don't think I would like rewatch it or pick it up if it was on. I might be like, oh, that was kind of cool, and just change the channel. Not really have any quotable scenes there, really.
Yeah,
it was an okay movie. I just kind of get lost sometimes in the musicals.
Well, I mean that last
where they just have
one was like 45 minutes long. I want to get a true like cut time of how long that one in New York. I couldn't even tell you what the song was.
I guess it was like 6 years of my life is what I lost there. You know that I was a brunette before that song started. You know that?
I know you're gray.
For those listening, I am totally gray. I just that song just
it was one of the longest musical numbers I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So we will come back next week with a actual time on it, but 6 years is a close estimate. All right, so why don't you go ahead and hop into the movie description?
Oh, I didn't even think about this.
I love it.
Takes place in Hollywood. Some actors during the time period where movies are transitioning from the silent films with like some music in the background to talkies where they're actually talking and it's actually synced up with the visualization there.
I hate the phrase talkies.
And it's not great.
Yeah.
Movies is a bit better, but it's kind of silly when you think about it.
Hate talkies.
And how they're adapting to it takes place in kind of a musical setting, and there's a love story intertwined. Yeah.
I truly feel like that the vaguer you are with a movie description, not just you being the general public, the vaguer the description is, the better it is.
It was a movie.
Yes.
For sure.
All right, oh God.
I think you want to click on the more.
I do think I want to click on more. Let's hop into what Max.
Okay, no, I guess that's all you get.
Okay, let's jump into what Max describes this movie as.
You said short and sweet, right?
Yeah, short and sweet. Here, we'll see how short and sweet this is. A silent screen swashbuckler finds love while trying to adjust to the coming of sound.
Again, someone trying far too hard. They're like, hey.
Swashbuckler? I mean, that's what I think of for pirates.
64 characters. How pretentious can I sound? And like, that's just what they ran with.
Yikes.
Yeah, that was.
I mean.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think there's like maybe a little bit more to unpack there than just that.
Like a pirate or something. I don't know.
Interesting. I mean, movie description, Always good for a laugh. Always, every week.
Yeah, it's
It's why the people keep coming back.
100%. It's all right. That's why people subscribe and like ring the notification bell and
Rate and review.
Rate and review.
Follow, subscribe.
Yeah. Why don't you just go ahead and add us as contacts on email, culturenightpod@gmail.com.
Yeah. That way, when we send out our non-existent emails,
Newsletter.
we won't get lost in your spam. All right. Was the movie what you expected?
No.
You gave us a little bit of your rundown of it.
I kind of told you what I was looking for. There was a scene where he was dancing and singing in the rain. Got that. That's about all I can say I was really expecting that met up with it. But
Yeah, I didn't really even have like a setting in mind for this. The fact, I mean, I made him rewind it in the first, 5 seconds, because the premiere lights, it said 1927 Best Picture or whatever. So I was like, I think it's important to know when this movie is set, because I was not expecting it to be set in the 20s.
So I do have a note. This was set in 1927 or around that time and was made in 1952. So for reference, that'd be the equivalent of a movie coming out today taking place in 1998.
Ugh, that makes me feel very old. Ugh, we were in like first grade.
So just for reference of how that would take place now, it's like a movie based in the late 90s, early 2000s almost time frame.
That's a good note. I like those kind
I
of
love doing
thought
the conversions when I see
exercises.
these things. I did not do the conversion of 5 cents from 52 to or 1927 till now, though, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not expecting the old Hollywood vibe. I'll get into it a little bit more later, but I
do love the old Hollywood
I
vibe, though.
loved it.
This felt like a very G-rated Hollywood vibe. I feel like they kind of really were not as cutthroat as I was expecting. Pulled a lot of punches in how they kind of showed the making of the movie and that and whatnot. Especially back when there wasn't everything being recorded and a lot of oversight. I feel like they would have been much more aggressive than they portrayed in the movie.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, it's rated G. What do you expect? All right. How well did it age?
Fine, honestly.
I mean, and I think it always helps when a movie is made many, many years after it was set. That obviously, I mean, also the quality was great.
Yeah.
I just kept like, they would have the close-ups of Gene Kelly's face. And I was like, I can see the wrinkles and the pores on his skin. And I don't know how that's possible.
Well, it is 4K, and I will get into that later. Even though this was filmed in 1952, 4K, essentially being filmed. Like I'm gonna do it behind the screens on this at some point.
Love it.
Essentially, you can make a lot of these older movies that were filmed literally analog on film and remaster them in these in 4K. So that's why it looks so much better than you would expect. If movies that were filmed in like early digital formats, you can't really obviously do the same thing for.
Yeah. I can tell you, it's hard to mess around with digital if it's not done right.
Yeah. So you can preserve a lot of quality with that.
Yeah. But I mean, the overall aging, like it was set in the past, so it was a portrayal of a specific time. I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Can't really do much to change it.
Yeah. Agreed. I think it does help. Like when you are specifically portraying a scene, a time period of the past. One thing to note though, also with the watching in 4K, we watched this on Max. So if anyone else wants to watch it, that's where we viewed this movie. So if you have a subscription, go for it.
And maybe pause and go back and watch it before you listen to anything else we say.
Yeah, it might make sense.
Just so you know.
It's kind of weird to listen to this and not have seen it, but there's people out there.
Teach their own.
Yeah. Could this movie be made today? I think it
Yes.
could. I
think it could be almost the same.
Yes, I think some of the musicals would be portrayed a little differently. They might kind of make some things a little more dramatic with like the behind the screens Hollywood stuff. But I think they could remake this movie today, and I think that even if it hadn't existed, they could still make this movie today.
Agreed.
It wasn't really anything too, obscene or, not acceptable today in this. And again, portraying a time period.
Yeah, 100%.
Did they say the title of the movie in the movie?
I mean, there
Yes,
was
they did.
like
They sang it
many songs about it.
several times. Yes. Does the title fit the movie? Yes, but I almost feel like it was forced.
Yes, I mean the title I think comes from the song more than the actual. I don't think it fits.
Yeah.
Yes, they sang, and like the song he sang was right and fitting for what he was singing about and the sentiment he was trying to get across. They probably could have picked a better title.
They really tried to it's like they picked this song or this title and they really tried to back into it and really work from there. And it felt really awkward. It's like they start out very strong, like with the song to start off with, that he sings it himself in his like soliloquy type thing. After she kisses him or he kisses her, they kiss. And
It's very important to be correct.
I wasn't
there.
paying attention to who kissed who. And then again, they sing it in like the final scene. And it still just felt like they were trying to be like, hey, here's the movie. Remember, here it is, the movie, Singing in the Rain. That's what you're watching. Here it is.
Very forced.
Yeah. So fit it, yes, but only because they forced it so much. I don't know what else they really could have done.
I mean, I think just like anything about, I feel like the plot of the movie was about going from silent films to the talkies.
Yeah.
That this Singing in the Rain was kind of like a B or C plot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I am not as gifted with titles as you are.
Honestly, I'd like to just remade without like, and just cut out the whole Singing in the Rain part, or at least just make it that one song.
Or just have the instrumental in the
background.
background of something, not actual words.
Yeah, and have something more playing along the lines of like talking, like talkies or something, to be like, call it like, you can't hear me or shh or something. Like,
ooh, God, you're always
like
so
a little
good
more
at this.
like playing on that part, and just cut out the whole like we're trying to force you to remember this song Singing in the Rain, because otherwise, it's a cool story.
Yeah.
Especially if it's true. Who knows? Might not be true at all. Could be completely false. We'll deep dive it.
Oh, please bring that back next week. All right. Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things? Yes.
So it had Debbie Reynolds.
Halloween Town, DCOM.
You said that she's also the mother of
Yes, she's Carrie Fisher's mom.
Gene Kelly, like names I've heard. Donald O'Connor, he looks very familiar. I don't know if he was in things that I've otherwise seen. I'm pretty sure that was Cosmo.
I believe so.
But otherwise, I think they were big for the time. I don't really know them as much, but Debbie Reynolds definitely was I think probably the bigger name out of that. Although you could probably say Gene Kelly was.
I mean, I think Gene Kelly was the big name, and this was probably one of Debbie Reynolds' like first.
Well, she was like 20, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a 20-year age
So
difference.
that's what I mean. She went on to do the bigger things.
She went on to do bigger things. Yes, Donald O'Connor was Cosmo.
What impact do you think this movie had on pop culture, and do you feel culture after watching it?
I don't know where it falls in the like musical genre, and I don't know how much that truly plays into the musical thing. I mean, Wonder Man came out before this, and that was the musicals were similar in style to that. But I mean, the song is everywhere. Like you said, it's in Friends. I also know it from Glee. I don't just know it from Glee. Please don't think I'm that person. That I feel like the song is used everywhere. That I think, like you said, you didn't even realize it was a musical. I think the song is way more than anything that the movie is.
I figured it was from a musical. I didn't know there was an actual musical called Singing in the Rain. I just figured, like, when I saw A Clockwork Orange and he's dancing and singing to it, that it was from some other musical, or at least some play. I think that for the pop culture thing, I think it's just, like you said, it's kind of like referenced or redone in a bunch of other things. For feeling culture after watching it, it's like, now at least when I watch that, I kind of know the original source material. So I'd say I feel
cultured.
Yeah, somewhat culture after watching it.
I mean, the more I think about it, I liked the actual movie. I think I'm more annoyed that it's called Singing in the Rain, because I don't think that fits it. I think that just like has had its own life outside of what the actual movie was, and maybe because we watched this movie for Culture Night, and we've just like been so in the like movies and behind the scenes and all that stuff, that I appreciated the actual movie a lot.
Yeah, it felt almost like the non-musical part felt like a G-rated version of that. Was it on HBO? Hollywood?
Ooh, I think it was Netflix.
They kind of showed like the behind the scenes of around this time of Hollywood.
I think about that show more than I should.
Right? And I kind of want to see this story told more in that lens than.
Yeah, I want more of this like 1920s to 1940s old Hollywood style movies. Like, I want us as a society to dive into that more. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I think it all moved really quickly, and there was a lot of like cut through competition and things like that. And just seeing like, oh, here's how we went from this to dubbing or to musicals or to how we made blockbusters, all these various things. I want to see more behind the scenes of that. Excuse me, and like dramatizations of it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm fascinated. All right. So with that, are you ready to jump into your notes? Kick us off.
Sure. So first note is that they started with like the only song from this movie that I know. Like they went hot and heavy with like opening credits, boom, Singing in the Rain.
Yep. I thought the same thing. I was like, is this it?
And they didn't really reference it for a long time that I'm like, huh, is that really all they're going to do? The beginning.
I thought that too.
And they really drilled it home towards the end though. They did also though have the Good Morning song.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning. Or as Debbie Reynolds sang, good morning. I couldn't unhear when she was singing it.
Did. There were a lot more songs from this that I knew, like Make 'Em Laugh. I've also know that one. I don't know if that's because of like my chorus background and I sang it or somebody else sang it in my time in chorus, or maybe it was a Glee brought back. I've definitely heard that before.
That song was much more of the musicals that I've seen from this time period where it's like almost a self-contained musical number that you could just remove from the movie and no one would notice. I really push it forward. It was kind of like it felt like the choreography song that we like to talk about from White Christmas.
Yes. I just also was so waiting for him to be done singing and for like Gene Kelly to have something to say, like, oh, that was weird, or to have some kind of like remark before they just faded into the next scene.
Yeah, that felt very odd and like something that would be a deleted scene nowadays. I mentioned that the movie took place in the equivalent of, if we're made today, in the equivalent of 1998. I got a lot of Dick Van Dyke vibes when they were doing that musical number in the beginning. Gene Kelly reminded me a lot of Dick Van Dyke in ways, like mannerisms when he and Donald O'Connor were like acting together, showing how they came up. Felt a lot of that.
Interesting. I see it.
And then I really felt though that Donald O'Connor needed to be played by Danny Kaye.
Thank you. I knew that you can only tolerate but so much Danny Kaye, but I was like, I think this guy and Danny Kaye should be best friends. Yeah. Same like, style of comedy, their facial expressions. Sure. Oh, I did love it.
Yeah. If they'd swapped them out, you wouldn't have like known.
There was a brief second when he first came on the screen where I was like, oh my God, is it him? And then it wasn't. But I got excited for a second.
I think a movie starring Danny Kaye and Donald O'Connor, if it does exist, would be far too much for me, though.
Yes. I would enjoy it. I'm all here for it.
I felt like he seemed like a more toned down version of Danny Kaye, and he was more tolerable because of that. He wasn't trying to constantly
but I also I think he wasn't like the main character was Gene Kelly. He was very much there for that comedic relief or the like over the top acting things. Wonder Man, Danny Kaye was the star of the show.
But I feel like Danny Kaye couldn't be a side, like, supporting actor. He would have to be, like, one of the two main actors and, like, have to constantly do his, like, antics of, like, his facial expressions and his, like, sound effects and his, like, imitations. He seemed like he could kind of, like, do his fun things but not steal the show minus that one musical number that he had. It didn't seem very musical at first. There was a long time where there was just no music. Like they had the opening credits of the Singin' in the Rain and then no music for a while.
So you brought that up and I was like, are we sure this is musical? And then by the end I was like, oh my God, stop singing. It went like a huge dry spell and then they just were like punch you in the face with it.
Yeah.
They couldn't stop singing in the rain. Jeez.
Really drove it home that, well, I guess they had Singin' in the Rain, then they had that musical number to show how, the two main characters, I don't remember their character names, had met or been known each other for a while. And then, it was just nothing.
It was, I guess.
Not very well balanced, I would say.
Yes. Because then that one musical number, again, was just like a good quarter of the movie. Maybe not quarter, but like a very large chunk of movie. And then there was like a couple other like little blips. I don't know. It was not well balanced for me.
Yeah. It seemed like they might have filmed this movie like as they were coming up with it.
It really does feel like that.
This scene where Debbie Reynolds was dancing like in the confetti streamers, whatnot.
I have a note about this too.
I was like, is she gonna trip? Like that's a lot of. They just kept pouring the confetti streamers on. I'm like, that's just okay. It's wrapped around her like feet now. It's wrapped around her arms, and she's
trying to swat it out of her face, and they're still
clearly
throwing
doing this all like in one take. So you've got a whole bunch of choreographed dancers together. But I was like, that's just a lot over the top.
Yeah. And can you imagine the direction of that? Of like, yeah, just keep throwing them. Just keep sucking it right at them.
And then you keep dancing, keep singing.
Yeah. And keep dancing and singing whilst batting stuff out of your face.
Seems miserable.
Yeah. I didn't know about that too. That was awful.
I feel like when they were doing the scene, especially with the good morning part, I felt like that this movie would be a good fit if they were remaking this to star Ed Helms and Jack Black.
Jack Black as Donald O'Connor's character, Cosmo.
Jack Black, I think more as Gene Kelly, but you could maybe switch them around. I feel like
Ed Helms is...
The way I saw them as kind of like dancing and making things up and just really loving the boop-a-doop doop doop that they both do all the time, that I'm like, remake with those two as the stars, and they would be in their like just heaven.
I just have a hard time picturing Jack Black as the like Gene Kelly leading man.
The dude was Bowser, man.
He was Bowser.
Yeah. What can't he do? He was also the lead in School of Rock and a bunch of other things.
He just doesn't carry the same vibe as Gene Kelly is more of what I'm getting at.
But if someone could get into a character, I'm sure he could.
He could definitely get into character. I love those two. The combo of those two is, especially because in The Office, Jack Black stars in that like cameo weird movie that they made. So they have technically been on the screen at the same time, not in the same room. Yep. But like a musical version of
They've
that.
got that connection.
Oh, I love it.
So we'll tweet at them and tell them to get on this remake.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they would love to do it, honestly. And then my last note was that during that long musical number where I don't even know what it was about or how it started, like towards the end, I lost track of what the fuck was going on.
Yep. Nothing. I mean, I remembered where it started, but I did not pay attention.
But after a while, I was like, did I miss something?
And then all of
is that where that started? What year is it?
Then there's that girl with the long dress thing that's just floating in the wind.
Right. And I'm like, is that wind or is someone like flapping that somehow? How's this going on? And then I forgot they were actually like in a movie and what movie we were watching. It just went on far too long.
Yeah. Not for me. I don't even remember what they were singing. I couldn't even tell you a single word of that song. I have a couple like images in my brain that I can remember of that, and that's it.
And that's like, so some movies like that are made nowadays, at least when they're doing some like, we're showing this like clip from a movie or this flashback, they'll like change the color tone or the frame rate or crop in a little bit and like they'll do something or make it black and white for even like something to differentiate, to say, hey, here's what you're seeing. Whereas this, you're like, is that a dream? Is this happening? Where did this come from? Where's it going to end? Why is it happening?
It was very hard.
They did tie it back at the end, but by that point,
But I wasn't expecting them to tie it back at the end because every other musical number had just hard cut to the next scene that I was so shocked when they pulled out and they were back where they started. And I was like, oh my God, we came full circle here. I was not ready for that.
But I like how even the one of our executive producer there, he was like, yeah, I can't really visualize that. You're going to have to show it to me. I'm like,
Thank you. The whole collective audience agrees with you. Yeah. All right. So my turn.
Go for it.
All right, my first note is Debbie Reynolds. I maybe knew she was in this, but I did not remember it. And I love her from Halloween Town. I know she's in other things, but just really cool to see her way back where she started at 20 years old. I think she'd been in a couple things before this, but just, but my brain also couldn't process that it was the same actress.
It's a little different movie than Halloween Town.
Just a little bit. I was like, you're going to grow up to be a witch. Don't mind me.
Go back in time and tell her that.
That's just where my brain lives.
You're going to be on a decom someday. And
it's going to be amazing. It's going to have a big cult following. My next note is Technicolor. It was shot in Technicolor. So that famous 3-strip process 4.
That color profile.
Yes, was brought back again in this. And then we've loosely talked about it already, but I love the 1950s portrayal of 1920s Hollywood. Because it's still close enough to that time where those people like remember, or most of them remember that time, and to just see so much of the behind the scenes. I was not prepared for it to be like a behind the scenes of Hollywood type thing, like Wonder Man and White Christmas and those types of movies. Like, it was so fascinating. I loved it.
And I feel like a lot of people might like romanticize that time period. And I do not romanticize that. I would not want to like live in that time period. I find it fascinating as hell. But I would not want to go back and like live in that time period.
And just think
by any
like
means.
how much was so different. I mean, we think of like the red carpet today for like movies and award shows and all that stuff, but just this lady with her giant microphone and how they had to make sure they were talking directly into it. And
I mean, we still have to kind of do that today. I'm not the best at it, but
yes, we're working on getting you positioned correctly. But the fashion and just like the boys who were positioning the lights, different places. I mean, so much of that I think was just so fascinating. Loved it.
yeah.
Also, I'm shocked you didn't talk about the Foley artist.
Oh yeah.
Because this was, could you have picked
Best episode for that.
Could you have picked a better one? Because you blindly picked that for Behind the Screens tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
No tie to this.
Literally 3 minutes before I went on, I was like, well, I need to find something. That role sounds kind of cool. Was very applicable, especially during the just make them laugh.
Yes.
Song's called. And that there were so many effects that I saw where he was like kicking off things and dropping, and you could tell that they were adding a lot of special effects afterwards, or special sound effects afterwards. And
then in the film where she's playing with her beaded necklace and it clearly doesn't fit right, that like having the wrong Foley artist wouldn't match right. I'm shocked you didn't bring that up here.
And maybe this is true for like every movie when we're just really paying attention to it this time, but it felt very applicable for this particular movie.
And I think too, especially doing it for a movie that is about going from silent films to films with sound, that it was super
I
fitting.
highlight that, especially during the time period when I highlighted 1914 was when this term became popular. That this being taking place like 10 years after that makes sense.
Fits right into the timeline. I already talked about the great quality. I'm looking forward to your behind the screens about 4K, old films, all that kind of stuff. We talked about the streamers, the dance numbers. And there are just so many extras. And you think about just the coordination of like all 20 people that are currently dancing, they all have to take time to learn this dance. And it's not like a short little dance. I mean, a lot of them are very intricate and all the tapping and the arms and the...
Yeah, I prefer to be the people that were like sitting at that table in the background, some of those, and be like, yeah, I'm in that dance scene. I just sat at a table and it was great. But yeah, some of those are intricate. Somebody had to come up with those. They had to practice and rehearse that.
And even just thinking about the dance number with Donald O'Connor and Gene Kelly when they were in the speech coach's office. And they were tapping away. I mean, I was sweaty just watching them, and they're up on the chairs and they're down and they're over here and they're doing this. And it was just like, oh my God, like how much time did you have to spend to learn those, especially tapping? I feel like that has to be very like intricate muscle memory.
Unless the Foley artist adds those in post.
Valid.
With some of those, you kind of forget there's 3 people dancing in there. Like with the coach, like he still has to be kind of moving and like being positioned correctly with all of these things, even though he's not like, looks like he's dancing. He's still very much an active participant in this musical number and has to be exactly where he needs to be. That choreographing that many people to be that precise. And then you throw in all the hundreds of extras, like you said.
And how many takes do you have to get that?
One take.
That I just like, I can't imagine that the stress and the pressure you have to put on yourself to be so precise and to hit all of your marks and I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah. And some of those, I mean, they do like one long extended take. Modern movies, they cut around a lot and they fix things in post and they cut things out and make them work. These, it seemed like they were just like, no, the film's expensive. We're going to go ahead and do this on one take. Because there was, I think, one scene I saw in the beginning where Gene Kelly was talking when they were at the movie premiere and he misspoke and then corrected himself and then kept talking. And I feel like nowadays they would have cut that part out, but they just kind of rolled with it because it was probably too hard to try to fix and keep everything exactly in sync.
Yeah, and I think especially watching a movie about a time period that was super long ago about movies and just thinking about like how the process of making films, it gets all in your head and it's a lot.
It's really changed and it's.
And then you think about Sin City that had 4 sets built for it and everything was just in front of a green screen and the intricacy of Singin' in the Rain.
There's so many times where I'm like, why wouldn't they just like fix this? And I think back like, here's what the set probably looked like. And I'm like, yeah, they weren't really equipped to do that or refilm that or, change all those things, or they couldn't import it into Final Cut Pro or DaVinci Resolve afterwards and just, boop, boop, fix it. It's like, no, you had to actually cut physically some strips, make them together and then copy them to
literally cut film
the world. Yeah. Wild.
And also just one more behind the scenes of Hollywood then when they were walking through the studio, Donald and Gene talking about I don't know what they were talking about, before the Make 'em Laugh number. And you see the guys on the train with the revolving background that was literally like on a treadmill, and just all of those cool behind the scenes things of like how they hacked together these movies to make it what you expect to see.
So much like sleight of hand to make it look
so
like
impressive
things.
for the 20s, like crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy. And then my last note is that Gene Kelly was giving me some mad Ben Affleck vibes. I know you were talking about Dick Van Dyke, but I think like physically and how his appearance was definitely would be played by Ben
There's
Affleck.
also that one guy that looked exactly like Seth Meyers. That might be his like grandfather.
There's a lot of doppelgangers in this.
And I think that's also ties back to what we talked about several episodes ago, where I see a lot of characters that look very similar to either characters from other movies of the time period or just from what we know. And I think it's more that Hollywood had a type and cast for it than anything else. But a lot of times I'm like, he looks just like this other character I know. It's like, yeah, because they saw this one character, found another one who looked like him. They're like, hey, we now have the same character in 2 movies.
Very true.
That it was more like, we have a type. These are how guys look. This is how girls look. And we'll keep casting the same ones over and over again.
Very true. I wonder if that's still the case now.
I'm sure it is.
True.
I mean, I'm sure there's some token efforts to be like, we're going to cast someone who looks like non-conventional, but for the most part, that's the exception.
Very true. Hollywood is just like wild to me. That's really what I'm taking more than anything else from this, is just how absurd Hollywood is.
And yet we all kind of use that as our like barometer for what life is actually like. Crazy. That's more what I'm getting from this whole podcast business. It's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. I mean, I will say, the more we talked about this, the more I'm like, I really did enjoy the actual movie. The musical numbers, a little bit less because there were a lot of them, but
I prefer what the movie could be than what I watched. But first time,
I could take a remake.
Great. But for me watching it right now, I'm like, I kind of want to see a darker, grittier version.
Ooh, darker, grittier, less musical, but like same vibe. Here for it.
Yeah.
I think it's time for a revival.
Heck, make it a series. I don't care. I got time.
It was set 100 years ago. So like,
ooh, that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not quite, but like pretty much. That's
in vague terms. It was set 100 years ago. So wrap your brain around that. But then it's also crazy that like in only 100 years, how much film, technology, Hollywood, publicity, paparazzi, all of that has grown. It's crazy.
Yeah. Different worlds.
All right. That's the end of my notes. I feel like I had something else to say, but I'll bring it back next week.
We don't really have a how noir you are like similar out of this.
Yeah.
We need to come up with a rubric for musicals.
I'll see what I can find, because we didn't come up with how noir you are till episode 2. Yeah. So I'll see what I can find this week.
We'll sleep on it and see what we got.
Yes. And with that, if you are enjoying the podcast, if you could rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you watch us on YouTube, if you could subscribe, leave us a comment, what you like, what you don't like. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Culture Night Pod. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, email us.
Movie suggestions for the season.
Please email us at culturenightpod@gmail.com or comment on any of our social media places. And tune in next week to see what musical week 2 brings.
Can't wait.
Yeah. See you next week.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers. Sorry, I wasn't ready. Bye.